Are you expecting me to eat this garbage? My sister-in-law sneered as I placed a plate of food in front of her. I had prepared pasta for both of us, hoping for a peaceful lunch. Before I could respond, she grimaced and exclaimed, "This is disgusting." Then, to my shock, she grabbed the plate and dumped the entire meal into the trash. My jaw dropped. "What are you doing?" I demanded, my voice tight with anger. "If it's inedible, it's trash," she replied with a smirk, already reaching for a pack of instant noodles, clearly what she had intended to eat all along. Little did she know, that moment would mark a turning point in her life. My name is Carolyn, and I'm a 35-year-old housewife. I live with my husband, Graham, and our 2 sons, making us a family of 4. We had our first son soon after getting married and our second 2 years later, so now they're 6 and 4 years old. Graham and I met at a party thrown by a mutual friend. At the time, I was a nurse, and he was a doctor. We both found it amusing that we met at a party rather than in a hospital. Our shared profession made conversation easy, and we clicked instantly. Even though he's 3 years older than me, Graham has always had a youthful, energetic spirit. He was confident and reliable, qualities that only made me fall for him more. We started dating and married a year later. After our first child was born, I decided to leave my job to focus on raising our family while Graham worked hard to support us. He's always been kind and appreciative, even after marriage and kids. "Thanks for always cooking and cleaning, Carolyn. I can work with peace of mind because you take care of everything at home," he often tells me, and those words never fail to make me happy. On his days off, he helps with the kids, too. I'm grateful every day that I married such a wonderful man. Our loving, harmonious relationship has helped our children grow into kind and happy kids. As our family grew, our apartment started feeling too small. We decided to build a house before our eldest son started elementary school. We spent months visiting real estate agents, exploring properties, and discussing our dream home. Finally, with everything planned, construction began. That New Year's, we visited Graham's parents and shared the news. To our surprise, they revealed that they were thinking of moving, too. "We're getting older," my father-in-law, Stanley, explained. "Rather than staying here, we want to move into a comfortable, high-end senior community." However, there was a wait list of about 6 months before they could move in. That's when Graham made a suggestion. "We won't be moving into our house for another 6 months either. Why don't we all stay here together until then? That way, we can help out if you need anything, and it'll save us on rent. Plus, our apartment is too cramped for the kids, they'd be much more comfortable here." Stanley and my mother-in-law, Sage, agreed, and with that, our temporary living arrangement began. We quickly canceled our lease, packed our belongings, and moved in. "Thank you, Sage and Stanley, for having us," I said gratefully. "The pleasure is ours," Sage replied warmly. "Grandma, Grandpa, let's play," the kids cheered excitedly. "I can't wait to join in, too," I added with a laugh. "Of course, but first, let's put everything away," Graham reminded them. The children were thrilled by the spacious house and the big yard. They eagerly ran upstairs to unpack before dashing outside to play. My husband and I watched them with smiles, happy to see them enjoying themselves. Our new home would have a big yard, too, and I could already picture them running around just as happily. Lost in thought, I suddenly noticed a figure standing beside me, staring out the window. Before I could react, the person started yelling, "Keep it down, I'm trying to sleep." The sharp voice startled the kids, freezing them in place. I turned in shock to see a disheveled woman in sweatpants with long, unkempt hair, my sister-in-law, Sloane. Graham immediately stepped forward, his expression hardening. "Sloane, what are you doing? They're just playing." "The nerve of you all, barging in here and making noise. I need my sleep," she snapped. I hadn't seen Sloane since our wedding, and I had assumed she lived on her own. Apparently, she had been staying here all along. "Enough, Sloane," Stanley interjected sternly. "I won't tolerate this behavior." With a scowl, she stormed back to her room, slamming the door behind her. The kids, shaken, abandoned their game and hurried back inside. "I'm sorry about that," Stanley reassured them. "Your aunt can be short-tempered, but it's not your fault. Kids should be outside running around." Sage stepped in with a smile. "How about some snacks and tea?" At the mention of treats, the children brightened and rushed off to wash their hands. Their laughter soon returned, but I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling in my chest. This was only the beginning. Later that evening, my husband turned to his parents, concern evident in his voice. Does Sloane ever leave the house? He asked. Sage sighed, looking troubled. She used to work part-time a few years ago, but she quit after some issues at work. Since then, she's barely stepped outside. It seemed Sloane had been carefully timing her outings to avoid us, which explained why we hadn't seen her in years. But now that we were living under the same roof, avoidance was no longer an option. Given her earlier outburst at the kids, I couldn't help but feel uneasy about our temporary cohabitation. When dinner time came, Sloane never appeared at the table. Should we call her? My husband asked. Stanley shook his head with a resigned expression. She doesn't eat with us. She waits until everyone's finished before coming down. She had completely withdrawn from family life. While being reclusive wasn't inherently wrong, her hostility toward the children was concerning. Neither my husband nor I knew how to interact with her. We barely knew her at all. I had no idea my sister was still living here, Graham admitted, sighing. Sorry about all this. Despite my unease, I reminded myself this arrangement was only temporary. I just had to endure it for 6 months. The next day, after my husband left for work and the kids went to kindergarten, Sloane finally emerged around noon, shuffling into the living room. She froze when she saw me. Why are you here? She asked, eyes narrowing. I blinked, confused. You're still staying? She pressed. That's when I realized she might not even know about the arrangement. Didn't Sage and Stanley tell you? I asked carefully. Tell me what? This felt like an opportunity to explain things properly, so I kept my voice calm and polite. We moved in yesterday. We'll be staying here for now. I offered her a slight nod. I hope we can get along, Sloane. Her entire expression darkened. She clenched her fists, trembling with anger. What? I didn't agree to this. You just showed up, and now we're all living together? Get out right now, she shouted. Her outburst caught me off guard. Before I could respond, Sage rushed into the room, alarmed by the yelling. Sloane, what's wrong? Mom, you can't just decide something like this without telling me, she fumed. I absolutely do not want to live with this woman and her noisy kids. I swallowed my frustration and forced myself to stay calm. Getting angry wouldn't help. I'm sorry, Sloane. We'll do our best not to disturb you, I said, bowing slightly. Please bear with us. But my attempt at diplomacy only seemed to fuel her resentment. You think you're acting all mature now? She spat. That's not what I meant. You're looking down on me, aren't you? Just because you married a doctor, you think you're better than me. Sloane, stop it, Sage interjected, her voice firm. Don't say such horrible things to Carolyn. Shut up, Sloane snapped, turning on her mother. You probably wish I was never born, that only Graham was your child. That's not true, Sage shot back, pained. Why do you think so little of yourself? Don't lie to me, I know exactly how you feel. Sloane's voice wavered with emotion. Before anyone could respond, she stormed into the kitchen, poured hot water into an instant noodle cup, and disappeared upstairs without another word. Sage let out a weary sigh and turned to me apologetically. I'm so sorry, Carolyn. She wasn't always like this. Her voice softened with regret. Ever since she failed her university entrance exam, she's been like this. She's always been sensitive. I listened quietly as she continued. She never got along well with classmates and had trouble trusting people. When she didn't get into her first choice school, she took it hard. She did enroll in a private university as a backup, but she quit, saying it wasn't the right fit. I nodded, taking it all in. We encouraged her to at least work part-time, but she never stuck with anything. Even the one job she stayed at for a while. One day, she just quit and never went back. Since then, she's barely left the house. Sage's shoulders slumped. Stanley and we're tired. We don't have the energy to argue with her anymore. We don't know what to do. Hearing her words, I finally grasped the full weight of the situation. Graham had once mentioned that Sloane was difficult, but even he hadn't known the extent of it. Maybe his parents had kept it from him to avoid burdening him. After a moment of silence, I said, we need to have a family discussion about this, with Graham, too. Sage hesitated, then nodded. You're right. We can't keep ignoring this. That night, after the kids were asleep, we all gathered in the living room, my husband, his parents, and me. As we explained everything, Graham's face darkened. I had no idea it was this bad, he admitted, his tone serious. We can't just let this go on. We need to do something, now. He looked at his parents. Has she ever talked about why she doesn't work? What's holding her back? Sage and Stanley exchanged glances, unsure how to answer. We need to understand what's really going on with her, Graham said firmly, because this isn't normal. A heavy silence fell over the room. Deep down, I had a feeling this was only the beginning. My husband wanted to understand why Sloane kept quitting her part-time jobs. Maybe if he knew, we could find a way to help her. So, despite how draining it was to deal with her, he went to talk to her directly. "Sis, can I talk to you for a minute?" he asked. "What? I'm busy," she replied curtly, though she was just scrolling on her phone. "Sorry to disturb you, I just wanted to chat," he said, keeping his tone light. At first, Sloane was cold and standoffish, but little by little, she started talking. "It's always someone else's fault, never mine," she muttered bitterly. "I see, that must have been tough," my husband said, listening patiently. When he finally came out of her room, he looked exhausted. I asked her why she quit all those jobs. He told me, every story was just her blaming others. She doesn't see herself as the problem, but honestly, it sounds like she was the common denominator in all those situations. I sighed. That's complicated. Still, it was a small breakthrough. At least she was opening up to my husband. Encouraged by this, he continued to talk with her in the evenings and on his days off. Slowly, Sloane began coming down to the dining table when we or the in-laws were there. It started with her just sitting at the table, then, little by little, she participated in the meal. "Sloane, shall I serve you some rice?" I offered. "Yes, please," she replied, her tone softer than before. "Today we have chicken. It's really good, I'll give you one of Dad's pieces," my husband joked. "Thank you," she murmured. Seeing the in-laws chat happily with Sloane, I felt a flicker of hope. Even the boys, sensing she was no longer as intimidating, ate their meal in peace. "Good job, Graham," I said, appreciating my husband's patience. He sighed. "This is just the first step." We all knew there was still a long road ahead. In a few months, we and the in-laws would be moving out. Sloane needed to become independent. At first, it seemed like she was making progress. She started coming down to the living room during the day. Occasionally, she even interacted with the children. I thought things were improving, until one evening, while I was helping with dinner, she muttered something cruel. "You're really bad at cooking, Carolyn, and you're not even pretty. How did you manage to seduce Graham? Did you use your body?" She snickered. "You seem like the type who's bad with men, the kind of unattractive woman who somehow keeps getting guys. That's you." I froze. She couldn't feel satisfied unless she was tearing someone else down. I clenched my fists, but forced myself to stay calm. This was temporary, just a little while longer. But it didn't stop there. One afternoon, Sage was at the hospital for a checkup, and Stanley was out with friends, leaving me alone with Sloane at lunchtime. "I'm hungry, Carolyn, make me something," she said lazily. I didn't want to, but I knew refusing would only escalate things. I made a simple pasta dish for both of us. Then, "Wow, this looks awful," she sneered, and then, to my shock, she grabbed the plate and dumped the entire thing into the trash. I gasped. "What are you doing? Throwing away food is unacceptable." Sloane just smirked. "If it's inedible, it's no different from garbage, right? If I can't eat it, I have to throw it away," she said airily, as if she were doing something completely reasonable. Then, as if she had planned it all along, she pulled out an instant pasta cup from the cupboard and started preparing it for herself. That was it. I had been patient, I had endured, I had tried. That night, I sat down with my husband and the in-laws and told them everything, her insults, her escalating harassment, and what had happened that afternoon. They were devastated. And that was the final straw. A decision was made. We were done trying with Sloane. Our new house was nearly finished, and the in-laws had already secured a spot in a retirement facility. They had been hesitant to leave Sloane behind, but after everything, they no longer had any reservations. We started packing immediately. A month later, moving day arrived. The movers bustled around, carrying out furniture and appliances, when Sloane finally came downstairs, looking groggy. "It's so noisy this morning, what's going on?" she mumbled. My husband answered casually, "We're moving to our new house." "Oh really?" She yawned, stretching, then she frowned. "Wait, why is the fridge gone? I was about to have some milk. Are you stealing it?" "We sold it," Sage said flatly. "Sold it? Why?" "Because we're moving out too," Sage continued. "Your father and I won't be living here anymore." Sloane barely reacted. Oh, that's it? We're moving to a new place? Huh, you should have just said so. Seriously, no heads up? No discussion? She waved a hand dismissively. Well, whatever. Just make sure you pack my stuff too. For a moment, there was silence. Then my husband said, okay, but where is your house? Sloane blinked. Huh? What do you mean, where? She let out a short laugh. Obviously, it's wherever Mom and Dad are moving to, right? Stanley sighed deeply and finally said the words she never expected to hear. No, we're moving to a retirement home. We're not taking you with us. Sloane's smile vanished. What? It's because of how you treated Carolyn, Stanley said. His voice was firm, but there was unmistakable disappointment in it. We've always cared for you, even when we didn't know how to help. We supported you, and Graham and his family tried to help you regain your independence, and you threw it all away. You trampled on our kindness, so now, we're done. For the first time, Sloane looked shaken. I can't live alone, she said quickly. I don't know how to manage a household. We're not leaving this house to you, Stanley said. It's already sold. You need to pack your things and leave immediately. But I'll be homeless, she cried. That's your problem, Stanley said coldly. Her eyes darted desperately to my husband. Graham, please take me with you to your new house. Let me live with you. I was stunned that she could even ask such a thing. But my husband's voice was like ice. Sis, I will never forgive you for hurting my wife, he said. I'm cutting ties with you. Don't ever contact us again. We left Sloane behind and drove to our new home, finally free of her. Later, we heard that she had reluctantly moved to Stanley's brother's farm. The remote countryside meant weak internet, no entertainment, and endless manual labor. She reportedly hated every minute of it. Frankly, my husband and I thought it was well-deserved. The in-laws settled into their comfortable retirement home, and we flourished in our new house. Our children ran around in the yard, laughing and playing freely. For the first time in a long time, peace returned to our lives. And we looked forward to every day ahead.